Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let's continue our journey of learning Uloom al-Quran, the sciences of Quran. We are often asked, and today is our third episode of learning Uloom al-Quran. We are often asked, what is Quran, or why Quran is called Quran? The word Quran is derived from Arabic word qara yaqra'u, which literally means that to collect or gather. The word came to be used for reading because the words and letters are collected together while reading something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Qiyamah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'anahu. Indeed, upon us rest the collecting thereof and reciting thereof. So this verse refers to Quran. And there is another verse in Quran, and this verse is in Surah Al-Fussilat, quoting the disbelievers, because disbelievers used to mock and make noise and when the Quran was recited. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَا تَسْمَعُوا لِهَذَا الْقُرْآنَ وَالْغَوْا فِيهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَغْلِبُونَ. That listen not to this Quran, but too loudly during its recital. So the kuffar, they used to make noise. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning the Quran is recited. So whenever we see Quran is being recited, we should stay quiet. So, and the Quran, another reason for its name is because it puts the chapter together and join them to collect them. So now, so many people have given different name to this book. Allama Abul Ma'ali Rahmatullah has mentioned 55 names for Quran, and some scholars have given different names, and they say up to 90 names of the Quran. Mufti Taqi Usmani Saab Damat Barakatuh, our contemporary scholar, greatest scholar, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him, has mentioned 5 names of Al-Quran. And he said very first name is Al-Quran, means it is recited. This book is done like tilawat, so that's what we call it Quran. And the second name he has given Al-Furqan, means the criterion, the standard. This Quran has a criterion, so that's why we call it Furqan. And then the third name he mentioned is Ad-Dhikr, means remembrance, reminder. Reminder is always beneficial. The Quran is a reminder, it reminds us again and again, so that's why it is called Ad-Dhikr. And then Al-Khitab, the fourth name is Al-Khitab, this addresses us, so that's we call it Al-Khitab. And At-Tanzil, this Quran was revealed to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's a revelation, so that's what we call it At-Tanzil. And then how we define Quran. Suppose if somebody asks me, define Quran, so I would say Quran is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it was revealed to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam slowly and gradually, and through the angel Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, and which was preserved in the form of a book, in the form of a mushaf, and has reached us by mutawatir transmission. This is what the Quran is. It's the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam through Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam, and it was preserved in the form of mushaf at the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the time of the Sahaba Kiram Ridwanullah ajmain, and now it reaches to us. And this definition is derived by different muhaddithin and scholars of Quran and jurisprudence for that one. So now, so in Quran we see there are so many surahs. If I open Quran, I would see there are so many surahs. So now you might ask, what is surah? Surah is a chapter. A chapter could be long chapter, a chapter could be small chapter. The biggest chapter in Quran is Al-Baqarah, which is in the juz number 1, juz number 2, Alif Lam Mim, Sayaqul, Tilka Rasul, this in 3 chapters. And the smallest juz, smallest chapter, smallest surah is Surah Al-Qasr, which is in 30th juz. So these are just like a building blocks. They are building blocks. Some blocks would be bigger, some blocks would be smaller. So, and each block is very comprehensive block. If you take the Surah Al-Qasr, it has a very clear and comprehensive message. Surah Al-Ikhlas, talking about the wahdaniyat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, very complete and clear message. Qul ya ayyuhal kafirun, a complete message. Each surah, each chapter has very comprehensive message in it. So there are 114 surahs, there are 114 chapters in Quran. And where did the names of surah came from? So many people ask that these names are, from where it came. So some of the name, the ulama and scholars, they have discussed about it. And they say some of the names they were given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and some people they took some words from the surah and then they give the name. Some say that some names of the surahs are based on ijtihad of Sahaba Ikram Rizwanullah Ajmain. Some do not agree to this view, just like Shaykh bin Baz rahmatullah alayh, who felt if there is no clear indication that all surahs are explicitly named by Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he felt that some were named by him and some were named by Sahaba Ikram Rizwanullah Ajma'in, and some were named by the contents within it. So that's why the name was given. So now each surah has certain verses, or each surah has some number of verses. Some surahs they have hundreds of verses, some surahs they have only 3 verses. 3 verses means small, you can say in a word, sentences with the meaning. So there are some. So now different scholars have different opinion about these verses. Some scholars are of the opinion there are 6,666 verses. Some are of the opinion that 6,236 verses. Some are says that there are 6,600 verses. It doesn't matter. It is a complete Quran, but some people they have broken down one sentence into 2 sentences, or some people they've combined 2 sentences into 1 sentence. The meaning is the same, but only this is what how they define it. It doesn't matter. Quran does not change in its meaning. Some people include Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim as a part of the verse, like in Surah Fatiha. In Indo-Pak, they say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is not a part of Surah Fatiha, it's a separate. But some people they say no, it's a part of Surah Fatiha. So there are different opinions. That's why the number of the verses are different. But actually, it's like Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is a part of the Quran. So there is no doubt about it. It is a part of the Quran. But some people consider it whether it's a part of that surah or not. There's a different opinion. So now the concept of 30 juz. Some people say the Quran is divided into 30 juz. The concept of 30 juz of something that came later, most likely, later on, where the people start reading one part in one day, and they say, okay, we will complete it in 30 days. So that's why these 30 juz came into existence. But these 30 juz were not there at the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now there are 7 azab, 7 manazils are there in Quran, because Sahaba Ikram Rizwanullah Ajma'in, they used to finish Quran in 7 days. So that's why they say one manzil, 1 day, second manzil, second day, and some. So this is what that's why they came. So now the subject matter. So what is the subject matter of Quran? Shah Waliullah rahmatullah alayh has broken down this into 5 areas. And they say ilmul jadl, the belief about our iman and yaqeen, and then the rebuttal and the response of the misguided thoughts and religions of the past, where people they had a different religion. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if anybody does not believe in it, then there is a rebuttal, and with the reference to the previous Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam. And then there is ilmul ahkam. The Quran talks about the ahkam, the ruling about what is halal, what is haram, what is allowed, what's not allowed, what is makruh, what's not makruh. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning in Quran. And then ilm tazkir bil Allah. Then this ilm means bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala which He has given to us. And these bounties are so many, like sky, like different weather, and we see earth. So these are the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala He has given to us, and then He reminds us that these are my bounties, these are attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the fourth one is ilm tazkir bi'amillah. That means the stories of Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, the nation of past, the Arab nation and the different nations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Thamud, Ad, Fir'aun, and all these Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned in that one. And then there is stories, the stories of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, they are mentioned in Quran again and again. And then ilm tazkir bil maut wa ma ba'd al maut, that what happens after death, what is going to happen in the grave, what is happening at the day of judgment, what is going to happen after the day of judgment, what is Jannah, what is Jahannam. These are mentioned in the book. And then Quran talk about beliefs. The Quran talks about three fundamental beliefs: Tawheed, oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing in the messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and the hereafter. This is what the Quran is talking about, the belief. The Quran uses various arguments to prove these beliefs in some capacity or another. Some examples are like this: proving in a logical manner, proving the argumental by citing sources that opponent also respect, shows examples of the people who succeed or who fail depending on if they heeded the advice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. So Allah is specifically, there are, like whenever we see any book, we see that who are the addressee of this book. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses four groups in His book Al-Quran: Yahud, Jew, Nasara, Christians, polytheists, and hypocrites, munafiqeen. And these verses of Quran, the verses of the Quran specifically deals with their beliefs and their practices, and Quran also invites them to the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that what the truth is and what their false beliefs are. And then the rulings and commandments in that book. The commandments can be divided again further into three different kinds: the laws and commands pertaining exclusively to the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we call it huququllah. We call it ibadat, the purification, aqimu salat, wa'atu zakat, warka'u marraki'in, hajj, fasting. These are the laws and commandments pertaining to the huququllah. And then law and commandments pertaining exclusively to the right of the people, which we call it huququl ibad, which are mutual dealings. For example, trade, justice, witness, trust, and then eating of slaughtered animals, use of different drinks, and so on. And the third one is laws and commandments, which are act of worship in some aspect and mutual dealings in other respect. For example, marriage, divorce, honesty, oath, and partnership, etc. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned so many bounties in Quran. Allah mentioned blessing which are universal in nature, and people generally around the world or other time periods can understand them. There are different bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are not specific to only certain groups or certain people. They are general to all these. For example, the skies, for example, moon, rain. It does not mean the rain and moon will come only to believers or people of North America or people of Australia. No, these are general. This is because the intent is that the Quran is universal in nature. And then the stories of the past, which I just mentioned, there are stories, for many stories Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen to tell us. The stories which Arabs were acquainted. So Arabs knew these stories but not in details. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned these stories as a reminder in the Quran. Not too much, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala briefly explained the story of Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam, Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, Yaqub alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. These stories are mentioned in Quran in a different, some stories are in detail, some stories are concise, just to reminder for us, actual reminder. The whole purpose of these stories is just to remind ourselves. The only prophet whose story was mentioned in complete and full detail, that's the story of Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam in Surah Yusuf in a chronological order. And then the verses have also to do with the mentions of grave, the signs of the day of judgment, heaven, hell, what's going to happen at the day of Qiyamah, what's going to happen, when we will be in the grave. All these things are mentioned in the Quran. And objective of these verses is to remind mankind of the true nature of this life, that this life is temporary life, and then there is another life which is dependent whatever we are doing in this life, and that life is permanent and forever and ever. So these are the beliefs mentioned in Quran, and inshallah we will continue our journey of learning Ulumul Quran in further detail in our next episode, inshallah. Stay tuned, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon so that whenever a new vlog is uploaded you may be notified. Inshallah we will continue our journey of learning Ulumul Quran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.